Okay, we are recording.
Okay, I'm gonna pull the agenda up, but before we get started, I know we have a couple of invited guests, so I'm gonna let them go ahead and introduce themselves. That's JT and Todd, and I'm not sure who the call-in number is, but you can introduce yourself too after the other two have gone. JT or Todd, would either of you like to start?
I can start. So Todd Niemeyer, and I work with the City of Charlottesville Office of Human Rights.
JT, could you introduce yourself?
You're on mute if you don't know it.
Okay. Well, I know JT, I don't know your exact job title. I know you're out of Siri's office though, so.
And JT's actually with the Office of Economic, or Economic Development Office.
Okay, great. All right. And then I know we have a call-in number. That's not showing a name, it's just calling the number, but.
That's Chris with the city. I just put myself on the phone so I could go out to the stormwater site.
Great to have you with us. So just real briefly before we move on to our main topics of discussion, I just wanted to share a couple updates with you all. I went out yesterday afternoon and put up signs from the main Darden Tow entrance to on the walking path through to Freebridge. So if you're out on the path and you want to look out for signs and make sure the QR code's working, that kind of thing. If anybody feels very strongly that signs should be somewhere else that they're not, I don't care if you want to relocate them. I tried to put them in locations where I thought they would be visible. And then Jessica is going to put signs up on the Riverview Path on Thursday. Is that right, Jessica?
I think I'm moving it to Friday, but it will happen this week.
Okay, this week. So I didn't have time to do both yesterday afternoon, and she lives out in that area. So yeah, so those will be out, but they are at the main trail entrances on Riverview at this point, and then they'll just need to be put out along the trail. So we have some of that going on. I did receive a couple emails from interested parties, so I will share those with you all at the end of our agenda where it says matters from the public. I will share that information that I've received so far just so you all are in the loop as well. But primarily today we wanted to talk about the public engagement considerations, and so there are two main pieces to this. The first is that we needed to solidify our plan to conduct the public engagement outreach to the business and property owners along the river corridor. So the county and the city, you all were going to help us identify the personal contacts that we needed to do the more personalized outreach to that might be more significantly impacted by some of the recommendations. So I'm going to turn it over to you all and to your economic development departments who are kindly represented on the phone today, just to help us talk through what makes the most sense. And then we can create a plan to schedule some workshops and move towards getting some more, robust live engagement opportunities for the public. Anybody want to start?
So I don't think we have Jason from the city, Jason Ness, on here.
I do not see him now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had talked to Chris Engel about this last week, and Jason or him was going to try to attend. I don't know. I can send Chris an email right now, but we'll have to not go first with the city.
Okay. Okay. I guess the first thing that we need to know is do you all have those contacts identified at this point?
Well, what I have not done with Tim is yet, and JT was, I've created a list of all the adjacent property owners, and I thought we would tag the ones that were adjacent to properties owned by the county.
Okay.
It seems like most of them have, and this is where JT maybe can help us out a little bit, but most of the areas adjacent to it are commercial properties, the shopping center, and State Farm obviously has had some concerns about the Greenway development in the past. So in my quick look at it, it seemed like we might want to notify. I'm not sure if we would want to leave out anybody. We'd probably want to notify every adjacent to the public land. How we approach certain people might be, I thought maybe JT would have some thoughts about how we discuss, and Tim from their experience, Tim and Dan, how we contact State Farm as an example. And I think it's Great Eastern Management that still owns the shopping center. Those and the apartment complex we're adjacent to it. We have sort of a beach access that we've sort of talked about. It seems like there are 3 or 4 properties that could have some, we'd want to have a more personal touch with. Those were the 3 that came to mind to me, but I thought all abutting properties should be at least notified in some way. And we were going to get you that abutting owner list.
Yeah, so what I thought was happening, and you all can just confirm or correct me otherwise, is that we will, at a minimum, send out some sort of physical mailing list to make sure everybody is aware of this process and make sure they know when they will have opportunities to participate and give feedback and what that all looks like. And then, but what we wanted to make sure that we do was that if there was anyone that was going to be potentially more heavily impacted or that required some sort of sensitivity to past relationships, that we utilize the relationships that the local government officials already have to do those beyond just the kind of more general mailing effort.
I'd sort of like to hear JT's ideas. Those were the 3 properties, and then adjacent to Dardentown Park are 3 private properties that I think, well, one's a commercial development. I think it's a small flooring company in a house, actually, in a garage. But those seem to be the properties that I thought needed somehow to have a more personal touch, but I don't know what that personal touch is. And that's where I was thinking perhaps Tim, Dan, and JT with their background, those were the 3 or 4 properties that seemed to be the most important to me.
Tim, I know, has been involved recently with some property owners that both economic development and parks have been speaking with. But I mean, I'll admit I was taking a call from Roger during the initial part of this discussion, but what I gather is we're trying to figure out relationship and contact. And so I think we would be happy to reach out to the businesses adjacent to the corridor. And David, I don't know if that looks like we have an Excel sheet with all the property owners and we identify a relationship manager, and we could certainly opt into, yes, we are regularly in touch with these folks. And Charisse, I think we over the weekend got some contact info for like Lewis and Clark updated, and I think if we approach it that way, that we could do it pretty efficiently.
Do you think it's better that we do the contacts as county reps as part of this process, or TJPDC?
Well, we could let the TJPDC kind of do the general thing, and then we follow up or give them a preview. Hey, look for this that's coming, and here's how it's relevant to you. At least that's how I think on the business side we'd want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good approach, just to have that comprehensive mailing, but then, an elevated sense of outreach to a few people. And yeah, I do think there's probably a extra value in having some county official do that for those 3 or 4 sensitive relationships, whether that's staff or even, an elected official. I think are we dealing with like Supervisor Kirtley's district, I guess?
Yeah.
So I know she hasn't been on the board for a tremendously long time, but even so, I almost wonder if like it rises to that level of kind of outreach. And if not, maybe JT and Roger would be the right people to step in initially, and parks can come in and community development can come in and assist as needed. But I think in general that approach would make the most sense. And David, I actually missed the third property that you kind of have pegged as a higher touch relationship. So it would be State Farm, Great Eastern Management, and what was that third one? I'm sorry.
Well, it was actually commercial. It's residential, but the apartment complex that's adjacent to the shopping center, which is sort of on the peninsula where I guess there's a beach proposal, and it seems to be a point where there could be a fair amount of activity. So contacting that management group, because they're kind of, it looks like in a bit of a pivotal point of the plan. I didn't say Presidio because you guys have been kind of talking with them, and I think they're a little more aware of what's going on. Again, there are 3 small properties at the very end of the cul-de-sac right by Darden Chow Park. Part of the reason that road is still public is to provide access to those properties. But it seemed like even one's a commercial enterprise and that owner owns the other 2 properties, I think. I don't know whether they need special hand holding or not, but there's a little bit of history there. So I thought that might warrant some further thought or follow up with those individuals. But those were really the ones that I thought. I mean, I think we want to be whenever we notify anybody adjacent, we want to be responsive. So we're going to give them an opportunity and a number and a contact to say if you have questions. And I would think we'd be prepared at some level, TJPDC and county staff, to respond to anybody that has concerns. But those were the ones I thought we might want to be a little more proactive in following through with.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with all of that. And I think, JT, your suggestion about if there's a possibility to even engage some of them, like while the mailing is being finalized and sent on its way, as sort of a preemptive, hey, this is coming and don't be surprised because that could really help grease the skids or just reduce friction,
Yeah.
And this is Chris. I would say, I know we're keeping the bridge and the corridor study on somewhat different but parallel tracks for public outreach. I would think that whoever talks to State Farm and those couple properties that are also going to see the bridge plan coming forward, that whoever talks to them also says, and by the way, you're also going to see this bridge thing, and have enough information to point back to the PDC's input process, whatever. So just for those specific ones, if you're going to talk to them once, that you have enough information to tell them about both processes at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think those bridge crossings shown on the plan will raise some interest that needs some explanation anyway, and giving them a heads up as to that other process will be important.
So I think, okay, and I know it doesn't look like anyone from the City Economic Development Department has joined us yet. Joey or Missy, I don't know if you all want to weigh in, or Crystal. Do you think that sounds reasonable for the city to follow that same protocol as well? Well, we'll go ahead and do a general outreach, and then while that's in process, the city can also identify if there are any particular property owners that maybe need to be preemptively contacted. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but
So I'm going to have to defer to the folks who attended the meeting back in November. I think Joey sent out the notes from that meeting after our last one, and it identified a number of the property owners. So I have to defer on this item.
Yeah, the ones we had were Wendell Wood, the Cosner family, and building management company. I think a similar sort of process. I know Jason and Chris have relationships with all those. I think a similar process could work for the city side, some like individual outreach from people who have relationships with these three. Or if there's anybody else on the city side that we've identified, I think that would be a good path.
okay.
I called Chris. I didn't get an answer, so I don't know if he's going to be able to join us or not.
Well, if you want to, Joey, could you follow up with them just to make sure before we move forward, just to confirm that there aren't any issues, and otherwise we'll just plan on following that procedure?
Yeah, so sort of,
Go ahead.
sorry, just to clarify, so we're going to have sort of a general public outreach, and then these people with special cases, I guess, will be somebody from economic development will reach out in addition to that the general mailing or
Correct.
whatever.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and move forward with doing the general contact, and then as we're doing that, the follow-ups will occur kind of simultaneously.
I'll talk to Chris or Jason to make sure that they're able to do that with these people. And if they identify somebody else along the corridor that we haven't talked about yet that they think it's also warranted for, I'll let everybody know that they'll be reaching out to them too. But I can follow up.
Yeah, we should probably just establish some specific dates by which this outreach needs to happen, so that if the intention is to give them a heads up, that it in fact happens before the general outreach happens.
Yeah.
Probably be best to have a couple bulleted talking points that we can give the economic staff, and that way everyone's putting forth a common message.
Okay. We can develop those. Let me ask you this: do you all want to discuss that right now, or do you want us to develop them and you can send them back and respond? The only thing is that I think we'll probably want to go ahead and get this moving prior to our next 2-week meeting. So I don't want to put together a draft and have to wait 2 weeks before we start moving forward with it, because I know we're trying to get this done by the end of the year. Do you guys have a preference? Would you rather talk it out now, or would you rather us put something and just try to massage it through email?
Let's talk about it just for a few minutes.
Okay.
And I'm wondering whether there is, I just was trying to pull up the web page, whether there are language from that can just be carefully, turned into bullets, but perhaps tailored for these particular recipients.
Yeah, I can share the web page so everybody can see it. Is it up for everybody?
Yep.
I think maybe the project summary and the vision statement might be the two highest level, easy to explain what we're trying to do kinds of pieces of information.
Sorry, I'm trying to look at it separately.
No
So
problem.
I'm reading through it. So
I mean, definitely the project summary is, that's kind of the snapshot of what it is. I wonder if there's one or two sentences or ways in which we could state why those individuals specifically are being contacted, right? Like, you are a major, you are the owner of, a property or that is either within or in close proximity, and your feedback or involvement or blah, blah, blah is particularly useful to the process.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and also, I mean, they may be impacted or they may find an opportunity to benefit from this facility, and just having a chance to contact them directly gives them a chance to talk through that with us. I mean, that's kind of my approach is, particularly something like the shopping center can have impacts based on its drainage issues, but it has lots of opportunities. If it knows about this plan, it can suggest some things or be thinking about its planning. I think it's just the personal touch with these larger properties. I think some scripted questions are good, but it's also to give them an opportunity to just openly talk to us about it. So I think also keeping it open-ended is beneficial. I was
Yeah, I
wondering
didn't necessarily think questions per se, but it just seemed like if we would want to make sure that our economic development folks have the clear direction, since they haven't been part of these discussions until now, of the potential feedback. So it's just a little bit of an overview.
We treat everybody the same and give them the same introduction to be consistent. I think is a good approach too. That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so why don't we, as the PDC, we will draft some materials and give you all a chance to review them. So it sounds like we need to draft the mailings.
Draft the mailings.
And then draft some points for the economic development staff.
Well, maybe if you can get it started, and then maybe we can, and JT can take a quick look at it, and the city folks, and suggest some changes, maybe just to get the ball rolling, some basic ones that we
That's
just
always
talked
the hardest
about.
part, is giving everybody something to start.
Just to get started.
Yeah. Okay. And then once we have those materials ready, we will get the list of property owners to contact, or business owners from you all as well. And so the only other thing I wanted to talk about related to this, as far as public engagement, is I think it would be helpful to go ahead and get at least a general schedule for some live workshops, so that when we send the mailing, we can have that information included as well. Based on where we are, I think probably, let's see, if we can get these done maybe by the end of next week, that's the first part of October. I think maybe mid-October might be the most feasible time, maybe the third week of October to schedule those. Do y'all have any thoughts on that? We would probably pick a week and do a weeknight and maybe a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock or something like that. Any preference on nights of the week?
Well, commission and board are Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay.
So we might want to avoid those, I guess, but
Maybe a
they're not every Tuesday and Wednesday. So there are days that work.
But maybe a Thursday evening is safe.
Thursday, yeah, Thursdays and Mondays are safe for us, but some Wednesdays would work too.
All right.
As long as it's not the third Monday. First and third Mondays are city council meeting.
Okay. Maybe we'll just stick to a Thursday evening and a Saturday morning, and we'll provide the opportunity, and we'll probably just do something, unless you all have any other suggestions. We'll probably just do something very similar to what we did with the steering committee. I think that's a good overview, gives people enough information, and then we can direct them to the website to provide any sort of additional feedback if they have other questions come up.
And then would the plan be to record those and to have a link to them on the project page so that folks can access it sort of on their own at another time?
Yep, we could do that as well. I don't know if we would, we can record both of them. Depending on how similar they are, we might not post both of them since the content would be the same. But yeah, we would have that content available.
I've got maybe a question for Tim, maybe Chris too. As far as a personal touch with property owners, is there any reason we need to kind of reach out to the service authorities more directly? I know they can, how they maintain their easements and rights of way can be pretty impactful. Is there a reason that we need to kind of have a personal touch with them, or do we hope that they'll just fall in line because they're sort of public and will do what we ask them to do?
Well, I think in Chris's memo, RWSA was listed as possibly willing to engage. I can't remember if Albemarle Service Authority was listed in here.
Yeah, I
see them
can't.
listed.
Yeah, I think everything in this quarter is actually Rivanna's. I think that's why, but I'm not positive of that. But.
Well, I think it is important to reach out to them. I mean, the city and the county have members on their board who are not sitting here having these discussions. So someone like, I don't know, maybe starting with Andrea Terry, and she actually would perhaps be a good staff person to add to our technical committee.
Okay.
And to at least provide her this awareness, and then see if she thinks that a discussion with her executive director would be useful.
Okay.
So I guess if the group wants, I know Andrea pretty well, I'd be happy to reach out to her and see what she thinks would be effective in their organization.
Yeah, I guess I guess it's worth checking in. Then after that, we can figure out what next steps, if any, or if she thinks any is useful.
Yeah, but I'll wait till we have those same kind of summary talking points. But yeah, I'm happy to reach out to her.
Okay.
Along those lines, David and Crystal and others, this is the list that you all helped us update with the kind of the interested stakeholders that we should probably make sure we reach out to and make sure that they're aware. I'll probably keep this on the same schedule as the more general public outreach. The ones right here, the Piedmont group of the Sierra Club, these ones where I don't have the email lists for them yet, those were the ones that tabled at the last Flow Festival. So she hasn't got me the contact information yet either. But again, I just wanted to share this is the most updated list that I have, and I will notify them along with the rest of the general public, or not the general public, but with the rest of the corridor property owners on that same schedule to make sure that they're also aware.
Yeah, I may be missing it, but I know Kim was suggesting that we add the Natural Heritage Committee. Yeah, I see it at the bottom there. It is. And we may add the Historic Preservation Committee, but I'm talking with Margaret. We may just want to handle that more internally, but there may be one more we'll add. We can give you the same attachment. I just asked her before the meeting.
If we do the mailing, okay, let's see, if we do the mailing next Friday, what is that, October, that's the 1st or the 2nd?
Second.
2nd?
Yeah.
Are you all
You'll-
good with that schedule?
Mhm.
Okay.
And David, a similar point to what you just made, the Pantops CAC, I wonder if that's the same kind of situation where we would just coordinate with them through staff, like through existing channels. I know their meeting is coming up, I think this upcoming Monday, right?
Yeah, and I think the notion was to give them a heads up. I think the idea is maybe we'll go ahead and notify through this process, but we will have a kind of a personal touch with them as well. And that's probably what we'll do with the Historic Preservation Committee. But we should, I think the plan was to go ahead and have them on this list and send them sort of a formal notice.
Cool. Okay. Sounds like that's already been thought of.
That's my understanding. I'll confirm that with Cameron. I don't think Cameron's on today, but I think that's what was decided.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. I think that covers it for outreach to our property and business owners. Anything else you all want to add to that?
Andy, I'm stepping out of the lane a little bit. I think you invited me to talk about equity, but I noticed on your spreadsheet that the Rivanna Trails Foundation was not included.
Okay.
That corridor incorporates several parcels that the Rivanna Trails Foundation holds lease agreements with to facilitate a footpath, and actually one of those is in limbo right now. The property owner, we're in discussion with them. They recently revoked I think it's actually shown on your map as still an existing trail corridor. So just wanted to bring that up. I can tell you more about the specifics there, but I would certainly add Rivanna Trails Foundation onto your spreadsheet.
Thank you. Yep. I've got the name on there. I'll look up an email address when we're done. Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay. I think we have a good plan for our next steps for the public engagement. Then we'll go ahead and start getting some of those materials prepared. We'll hopefully maybe have something out. Nick and Therese and I will work together maybe by Friday or early Monday at the earliest to let you all review, and then we'll plan to get those out at the end of next week to start a more concerted effort to raise awareness. So the next thing on our agenda then is to have the discussion of making sure that we are doing all of this with an equity, from an equity lens. So Todd, you can help us fill in the details, but the two main considerations that I saw is that we need to make sure that we are providing opportunities in an inclusive way so that people with different backgrounds are able to engage in the process. So, you know, to the extent that it's practical and feasible to do so. And then also making sure that we are considering equity in terms of our recommendations. The ones that stood out to me were some of the discussions maybe around public safety, also both in terms of access to the river and also accessibility once you're along the river, as well as the way that different demographics of folks may be using the river. So really, I think this is just an opportunity. Todd, I don't know how much background you have if you're able to look at the project website or anything like that, but we would love for you to help us navigate this process and making sure we're doing this well.
Well, thanks for the thought on that. That means a lot in terms of the fact that you're considering that and putting it as part of a primary objective. You know, I think that I was trying to think about different segments of the city and county population that you might want to engage, and sometimes the easiest way to do that is to figure out where are those where might those people already be congregating to talk to, right? So you mentioned, for example, accessibility. So I think about people with disabilities. So somebody who might be using a wheelchair or Other, may have some other challenges that they have to overcome in order to access the area. And so I was thinking about places like talking with the Independence Resource Center, right? So that's one place you could, connect with people in that regard. I think even bringing in perhaps the city's ADA coordinator to talk to him about, things that he's heard from community members with regard to access of public spaces, that might be very helpful. I think the other key thing, and I think about this too, and I've been thinking about this a lot with regard to Rivanna Trails Foundation, and I mentioned them earlier because I sat on that board for the past 12 years, but one of the biggest things that I'm thinking about with that foundation is that it's a pretty exclusive group of people. It's very white. It's been very male for a long time. There are a few women on the board, but it is not representative of the greater Charlottesville community. And I think that when we talk about land use and the history of land use, especially in the city and likely in the county as well, we really need to start thinking about the impacts on especially African American residents, but others as well. If you go back further and we're thinking about Native American populations, so I think connecting with groups, for example, maybe the Monacan tribe, or reach out to Andrea Douglas over at the African American Heritage Center and talk with Jordy Yeager, who's been doing a lot of work around restrictive land covenants and all of the history that goes into that. I think thinking about that and looking at an approach informed by the history that says, how do we not repeat the mistakes of the past in terms of doing work on land that has deep ties to history and sometimes painful ties to history. So those would be my initial thoughts on that. And those are a few outlets that you might plug into to try and get some ideas on how to do outreach that would be effective and respectful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got who was the person you mentioned after Andrea Douglas? I just want to make sure if you're giving us these recommendations, we're following up with them.
Oh, certainly. So Jordy Yeager, he's an independent reporter, but he's been working with Andrea at the Heritage Center on a project that has studied restrictive land covenants. So
Okay.
actually, just to give you a brief history of that is, prior to the Fair Housing Act and Civil Rights Act, it was allowable to include in titles to properties within the city that they could not be sold to a person of color. And so he's been doing a lot of research on that and looking at not only what properties had those restrictions, but how did that impact prosperity and development across race throughout the city. And so be a really informative conversation to have with him. He's deep in that work right now.
So what I'm hearing is that in addition to making sure that some of these agencies and I don't want to say representatives, but some of these key players or information holders are not just aware of the process. I mean, we want to make sure that they can communicate with any of their constituent bases that this is happening so that those users can also weigh in. But it sounds like it would probably also be useful to have some more in-depth conversations just directly one-on-one with them to review what we've created and see what opportunities or concerns maybe need to come to the forefront for consideration. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'd say that's an accurate thing. I think what I would always encourage you to do is, we're never fully aware of our blind spots. Sometimes we have an inkling of things that we don't quite know enough about, but sometimes there are things that, they're the unknown unknowns, to quote Rumsfeld. But yeah, so I think that's where you could really benefit from talking to folks. And I don't know if you've reached out to Siri Russell, but talking to Siri as well would be wonderful, because she could provide maybe some additional feedback from the county end.
Yeah, we're going to follow up with her next Wednesday. So she was not able to make it today, unfortunately. But yeah. Okay, I think I am going to.
I think it would be interesting if these various representatives or contacts had a chance to look at the vision and the guiding principles and some of the initiatives or recommendations and get their honest response to it.
Right. I think so. At our next meeting, at our next meeting, we should be able to go through some of the initial benchmarking findings. But I think based on some of those and probably some of these conversations, we'll want to look at adding recommendations, amending some of them, that kind of thing. So we'll have that conversation next week next meeting. But yeah, I think probably after some of these conversations, it would be the same thing where maybe there are some things that we need to do a little bit differently based on their feedback. Anything else related to the equity considerations? Okay. All right. And I'm also I'm just keeping a list here so we can all see what we're doing next. To discuss equity. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to just share with you all were some emails that we received with some correspondence, and I'll apologize. I'm going to turn my head to look at the other screen. We received an email from Lisa Wettenburn with the Rivanna Conservation Alliance. Her biggest source of feedback was that they are already working on some restoration efforts. And so they want to make sure that we're not working at cross efforts with them and make sure that we're coordinating any sort of stream restoration efforts. I don't know exactly to what extent it was coordinated when, the stream restoration areas on the maps that were produced for the opportunity maps for the website were that came from you all, but she basically just wanted to make sure that we weren't working across each other and that we were coordinating with them. So I think having the Rivanna Conservation Alliance aware and engaged in the process will help a lot. But if there's any other comment or feedback you all want to provide related to that, I'd be happy to respond to her.
Right. I think those areas are not any restoration projects that are funded or planned or in motion. They're opportunities.
Okay.
So in some ways, hopefully, it would be nice to know if there was any overlap between the work that they are doing and those areas that were identified as opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm just going to make a note then.
One comment on that is that it might not be clear on the map, on the study area map, that those are, because I think it just says stream restoration.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone looking at that might think that that is something that's planned or established.
Sure. Okay.
David, you're muted.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's just a general cleanup on the map we have to be mindful of, is the details on the map, understanding what it is that they mean, like the avoidance areas and restoration areas. What is the meaning of those? Are they proposed? Are they in process? Do they have boundaries? Things like that. So just sort of a next and final step in those maps, I think.
Okay. That's a good point. We got a comment. We've gotten several of these. They come in under different project names, so it's hard to keep track sometimes. But there's a concern about the large number and variety of invasive plants that line the riverbank in some areas along the Rivanna River. So I have this came from Ruth Douglas. Does anybody have contact with her? So again, I don't think that this is anything that anybody is unaware of, but just making sure she knows about the opportunities to participate in these meetings, and that's also something that this committee is aware of and is being addressed. And then we got, this one came in just last night or this morning from Emily Anderson. She's a landscape architect with Anhold Associates, and she was asking about the timeline for completing phase 2 and starting phase 3, and specifically she was interested in the location of the potential pedestrian bridges that were non-vehicular. So I let her know that there's not a set timeline for when phase 3 is expected to begin yet, but that the bridge, there are some other efforts to or there's some other activity that's happening around the bridge, and I put her in touch with Jessica to stay in touch with that. But that is the correspondence that I've received so far. It doesn't look like there's anyone else from the public. I know if we have some participation from the public, we'll give them an opportunity to weigh in, but that's the feedback that I've gotten so far. Again, if there's anything you want me to respond to specifically to either Ruth or Emily regarding the bridge, I'm happy to add any additional comments, but otherwise I'm just trying to make sure they know about the process and how they can participate in it.
Ruth is absolutely right. That corridor is crawling with invasives.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty big lift to get all of them, but. All right, that covers everything I had in my agenda. So just to review real quickly, let me share it again so you all can see it. The next steps are that Albemarle and Charlottesville are going to create the list of adjoining property owners. We're going to develop the information that we're going to send out, and also some main talking points or highlights for the economic development staff, and then we'll send that to you all to review, and then we'll plan to actually do the mail out information on at the end of next week. And then we're going to schedule 2 webinars for a public opportunity to engage in mid-October, the 3rd week of October. And then we're also going to follow up both with Siri and with some of the contacts that Todd just suggested to us to get some feedback on equity implications for some of these underserved groups, especially those that there might be some, sensitive, or I guess sensitive is the right word, some sensitivity around the historic utilization of land, and also to make sure that they are getting information out to their contacts to engage in the process. Is there anything else that we need to add to this list?
I was wondering if there's going to be, I saw it on your list, the Rivanna board. Is there any, are we going to be sending the same, would we send the same information, say, to the steering committee so that they can share it with their, the city council representative could share it with the rest of council? Or
you mean the information that we're sending out, like just to make the public aware?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can copy the steering committee.
I mean, it might be good for those folks to know that information is going out, because they may be the recipients of some inquiries.
Gotcha. Okay. So maybe, I mean, we can send them the same information as well, but maybe we should give them a heads up before it goes out.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just an FYI that this is one of the next steps, and that it's going to be both general and some specific outreach.
Okay. Thank you. Anything?
And then I'll just, I think it's part of the economic development staff reaching out to folks, but then I'll reach out to RWSA staff.
Okay. Okay. Anything else to add? All right. Sounds good.
Thanks,
Sounds
Todd,
like
for joining.
Thank you. And,
Yeah.
and I don't know if JT is still on, but we'll thank him even if he, yeah, JT's still on. Thank you, JT.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right. Anything else we need to discuss before we sign off? All right, sounds good. We'll get some email information out to you all, and then we will see you all in 2 weeks.
Sounds great. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Sharice. Thanks,
Yep.
everybody.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.